Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with ActualTech Media, and thank you for joining us for this RoadCast video. We're here today at Pluribus Networks, where we have Steve Shalita, who is the VP for Marketing. Steve, thank you for having us here.
Hi, Scott. Great to be here. Thanks for coming.
Happy to be here. We're going to talk about analytics and SDN and all kinds of cool things in this video. So
great.
Tell us about how analytics are critical to software-defined networking.
Well, I think the first point is, why are analytics and performance management, monitoring, there's lots of words that are floating around, why that matters, right? It matters because the network matters, and the network is the key thing that interconnects all of this infrastructure that people are building to deliver services to the user. Right? So performance management has been on the rise over the last 6-7 years because of the importance of availability, performance, and user experience in delivering networks. Have a bunch of different ways that you go about dealing with performance management and how you monitor. Enter in the next generation network with software-defined networking, and things become even more complex. As network traffic patterns change, as we move to the digital enterprise, it's no longer about north-south types of traffic flows.
Right.
What's happening in the data center becomes significantly more east-west focused. And the traditional ways of monitoring no longer scale, no longer give the visibility that's needed. And as you add SDN, you add a certain degree of complexity, despite things being simpler, that impacts understanding how the network is affecting performance and the user experience and application and service delivery quality. So when you move into an SDN environment, it becomes critically important to be able to understand how all of these pieces are interacting with each other, but more importantly, to be able to pick up the changing traffic flows, to be able to have greater visibility east-west, not just north-south.
So when you talk about all of this information that we're going to be getting so we can start to do better traffic routing and things like that, traffic patterning, what else changes when we have lots of analytics? What else can we do with that information?
Well, the typical use cases for analytics start with the first thing people think about with performance management is network operations. How do I run the network? How do I understand if there's problems emerging, right? Are you proactive or a reactive organization? Do you use early warning and ways to see those problems? How do I troubleshoot and fix those problems? That centers around network operations. The second typical use case area is around operational intelligence. How do I learn from the network, some people call that network intelligence, to make business decisions, to optimize capacity, to define policies, optimize those policies, and be able to go and implement them at the network level.
Right.
The third area that you see around analytics is security-related things. Can I use this analytics infrastructure to understand security risk and emerging security issues that are missed by traditional security infrastructure? See, most security systems are based on signatures. In a zero-day type of attack, most of those things emerge in a non-known signature environment. And there's a huge correlation between performance-related metrics and security implications. So if I look at traffic volumes changing, abnormal behavior, I can identify much earlier a security risk that would typically get missed by a traditional perimeter protection environment. You see a whole new market emerging of security analytics, and that's just based on the fundamental performance management capabilities that have been around, but they're tuned to security. So think of security analytics as being a third use case for performance management, and then using that same infrastructure to do your forensics and incident response.
So what I'm hearing is there's a lot of things that have been happening that have allowed administrators to then proactively, reactively make changes to the network to make it better. But we have this whole idea of intent now that we're starting to see enter the market. Gartner coined the term, I believe.
Yeah.
And this idea that we want to automate, and we want the network to learn and then self-adjust around and make sure that we're meeting the whatever business rules have been put in place. Can you talk a little about intent-based networking and how Pluribus is working with these sorts of technologies?
Absolutely, and Gartner did coin that term. Andrew Lerner, one of the analysts there, has been very vocal about that. Forrester's also talking about what they call VNI, virtual network infrastructure, that has some of those principles. The fundamental notion is, how do you build a network that understands what its operation is supposed to be like, and how do you adjust the network's operation to meet that intention at a very simple level? It really involves understanding state. There's two key things that you really need to do intent-based networking. And it's interesting because some vendors are using that term and talking about it, but they're not using it in the true spirit in which it's meant. Intent is really meant to understand current state, of the network and operations, and we can drill into what that means. And second is to understand what the intended state of the network is.
Right.
And then correlate between those 2 points with real-time behavior and adjust the network in a self-optimizing way to maintain that intended state. That's the key. To do that, you need 2 fundamental things, and really a third thing. You need deep analytics that understands application and network performance. Without that, how can you understand what the operating state of the network is?
Right.
You can't. Second is you need the automation at the policy and provisioning level to be able to go in and drive change in the network in a near instantaneous real-time way. So SDN is the best suited environment to be able to drive that kind of state adjustment, to be able to go in and automate and reprogram the network at will to make those changes. Analytics becomes extremely important because it's monitoring the network in real time and seeing deviation from state. It's understanding performance. So if you think of those 2 pieces together, I look at the network, I look at performance of applications and services, because it's not about network flows. It's about how is an application performing. 80% of performance issues in the network are not about traffic flows on a link and is the link being saturated. It's about interaction between the components of this network infrastructure. How does the network support the application, the interaction with DNS, DHCP, load balancers, security? All of these moving pieces affect network performance or user experience. So only with deep analytics can you understand all of these interrelationships and how things work together. So when you take that piece with the automation of the network, put that together, you're getting closer to the notion of intent. There's a number of vendors talking about intent, but no one's really delivering this capability. You've got approaches on a standalone basis of doing intent. How do you implement that? If they don't control the switch, they don't have analytics, it's only a piece of that puzzle. And then some vendors are kind of repurposing or redefining the notion of intent from the spirit in which it was created. This is perhaps the big wave, and Pluribus sees this as moving towards the autonomic network environment. How does the network become more self-operating, more self-aware of what it's doing and how it's contributing to the delivery of services that extends not just within the data center or the network, that extends into the campus, but extends as well into the cloud? Because how many organizations are doing hybrid types of deployments, right? That's the typical model.
And that's often where the network breaks down for organizations.
Exactly. What people think is, I can use analytics, and a lot of SDN vendors use the word analytics. Analytics is now an overused word because what does that mean, right? I like performance management better, performance monitoring, because it's clear you're actually looking at performance.
Yep.
You've got some of these disaggregated software vendors saying, yeah, we've built in measurements, monitoring into our switch. And yeah, it looks at basically machine data, log files, packet loss, volume of the CPU. That's not going to give you the metrics that you need to understand true performance. You've got to look at the flows of the network. And it's an evolution not only from, is the only way to do that with packets? Well, packets provide a lot of value, and you can extract a lot of meaningful data from packet flow-based information.
Right.
But I can also get a huge amount of data from enhanced flow types of information, leveraging telemetry built in at the networking level. And so what we've focused on is harnessing, number one, the telemetry and building the telemetry into the network device, eliminating the need for a probe. That's huge. Probes are very, very expensive, number one, so that makes them prohibitive to deploy.
Right.
Number two, you put them on strategic monitoring points. Well, the network's changed. East-west traffic dominates.
Everything is
85% is east-west. How do I probe that? You don't. So probes become a complicated environment. Oh, how do I implement that? Well, I put a packet broker or a network visibility fabric on top of the network. That's another layer, very expensive.
Well.
Then a probe on top of that. So what we've done is we've consumed the probe and consolidated that into the network itself. And the benefit is you get visibility on every port for every traffic flow for every transaction. And it's not limited by the capability of the probe, right? Probes today are mostly 10 gig. Some vendors have 40 gig and 100 gig probes, but the cost and the performance is huge because you got to get all those packets across the bus. So we can monitor every single port and every transaction at the speed of the network because we are the network. So seeing that, you generate the metadata. The second piece that we've done is taken and built the analytics platform or the performance management platform that consumes this data and then delivers the reporting and the ability to interrogate the data, correlate it, and do your analysis. Those are the two pieces that represent analytics. And then connecting that in, what we've done is we've put the analytics into our automation platform, what we call Pluribus Unum, and that actually brings together the network, all of the provisioning and knowledge of state and being able to program it and control it, along with the analytics in one single database. So we're closer to putting together a true intent-based engine that's able to see what's happening and make the adjustments to the network to adapt from an operational perspective.
Steve, thank you very much for that information.
Thanks very much, Scott.
And thank you to our audience for watching this RoadCast video.